Hello, and welcome to my spoiler review of Transformers The Last Knight, a movie I'm actually pretty excited to discuss with you, and for that reason, I think it might be what Paramount is looking for in terms of revitalizing the franchise. It still has its problems, for sure, but I think there's so much good stuff here that, again, I can't wait to talk to you about that they should be good to go. At least if they don't, I don't know. Mark Wahlberg said this is his last one, too. I would be sad to see him go. I think Michael Bay has done enough of these. Although, I have to say, the only real problem I have here is I think the script's just a little sloppy in the structure. And even some of the scenes are still quite good. So, I would love to see this team take one more crack at it. But anyway, let's break it down. And while normally I do this by characters, I've decided to do this by story chunks because it's just nuts, all the zigzags that this movie takes. And I think to some degree, successfully takes. Until the end, as I said in my non-spoiler review, the last third is a mess. Alright, so anyway, the movie starts out with King Arthur, as we knew it would. But I was just amazed at how well this worked. I think, first off, the cinematography was just so compelling. I was like, wow, look at these knights running across the IMAX 3D screen. It's just, there was such depth of field that it was mesmerizing to behold. And I was like, hey, you're giving Game of Thrones a bit of a run for its money. Good for you, Michael Bay. And then also, I like the diverse depiction of the Knights of the Round Table, but it didn't seem like tokenism. It just seemed to make sense. I was like, oh, you did that very well. Then I love the surprise of Stanley Tucci in disguise as Merlin. He was so funny. My favorite line, he was like, lots of big personalities clashing down there. When he was talking about the fight, I was like, I don't know if you ad-libbed that or what, but it's just brilliant. And then I also like this idea that that's what the magic was in the time of King Arthur, that, it's from Thor, and of course, as they point out here, more, I guess, more educationally accepted sources. But I always think of it from Thor, that magic is science we don't understand. So, I guess that there were Transformers in King Arthur's time is just as believable as that they had magical powers, right? I mean, where did both go? I guess, in this universe, they're still around. Just they were hidden for a long time. We'll get to that. Then next they moved, so they had the King Arthur storyline, and then they moved to post-apocalyptic, where they set up that Mark Wahlberg's Cade Yeager was against the government, right? Because the government had set up basically their stormtroopers, okay, who were just as incompetent. And then they threw a bunch of kids in the middle, which was okay. Although I thought when they hit under Canopy, and then, the Transformer Canopy, and he rose up, and he was yellow, and I was like, Bumblebee? And I'm not a huge Transformers fan. I mean, I enjoy the movies, but for a minute I thought it was Bumblebee. I'm sorry, my bad, but I don't know why they had to both be yellow. I'd be like, for the casual fan, there are a lot of colors in a Crayola box. Pick another one. Although, with that other Transformer who Cade tries to save, and he gives him this disc, and he's like, Cade can't understand what he's saying, and he's like, you take this. It was a total Green Lantern moment. The Transformer was even green. He was playing Abin Sur, and I was like, you're crazy, Michael Bay and Paramount, to rip off Green Lantern. Everybody, Green Lantern, you don't know until it's too late how many stories he's similar to. Captain Marvel has to be rewritten because of her similarities to Green Lantern. And now, of course, here, they're just borrowing from Green Lantern here. Green Lantern's like, come on, guys, I'm never going to get another crack at the big screen if you keep this up. Although, I doubt anybody will watch Green Lantern years from now and be like, wasn't that like Transformers? But anyway, because, these stories, they're flimsy. This is a very personality-driven movie. And I mean that in a positive way, in terms of the talent. And then when Megatron showed up in this post-apocalyptic situation, I thought that he looked different. I was like, that's not Megatron. Is that Megatron? Did he get, a different look? And I think that Frank Welker, with all due respect, is not as good as the voice as Hugo Weaving was. He just doesn't seem as menacing. He doesn't seem like the evil equivalent to Optimus Prime. He seems like he's a couple levels down in the evil hierarchy, quite frankly. Then they moved to another junkyard where Mark Wahlberg was set up, and I thought that was a pretty good setup, in fact. I thought that was a good plan. I'm surprised that the Autobots couldn't tell they'd been tagged. I was like, you can't feel that? I thought that was how did they not think that they might be tagged? I was like, that's straight out of the most basic Batman comic that you get a beacon tagged on you. But anyway, I guess Mark Wahlberg's character doesn't seem like the type to read comics, so that's on him. Maybe he should have. But I love the baby Dinobots there. I love Jared Carmichael as Mark Wahlberg's assistant. I thought that was very funny. And then so they had them all set up and how they were living there, and they reintroduced the other Transformers, the other Autobots, who I thought were fine. But then the Decepticons rolled up on them because they want that disc that Mark Wahlberg has, and so I thought that was pretty good. But I have to say, when they were and I liked the hologram motorcycle rider. I was like, that's pretty cool. But I don't understand in this timeline, in this storyline, or this version of the Transformers story, why does any Transformer, Decepticon, or Autobot need to hide out as a car? I mean, I guess because they've been made illegal by the government, but they really only show the government working with the Transformers or fully aware of their existence or where they were at all times. So I was like, the hiding's not really working, guys. So I didn't understand why anybody was hiding at all, ever. I was like, I think at this point, you guys, you don't need to be robots in disguise. You could just be robots at this point. But then also Megatron, he was able to find out where Mark Wahlberg was because he'd made a deal with the U.S. government, which I thought was very suspect. I was like, how do you think this is going to go well? But I'm like, whatever, it's for the movie. But so he had to negotiate with the U.S. government in what I thought was a very funny scene, where they had a bunch of lawyers sitting down at tables negotiating the release of prisoners. And I thought, the whole scene was well done, from the way it was written, to the way it was shot, to the way it was acted. And I also liked them introducing all the Decepticons, like Suicide Squad, right? And that was great. And I love that there was one, they were like, no way! Like, I like that they were like intimidated the U.S. government into releasing all the Decepticons until that one, and they were like, and I like that they were like, no way, pick another one. That's what Josh Duhamel said. And I love that Megatron was like, yeah, that was too far. And so he picked another one. He should have been like, do you want this magical staff or not, or whatever, but I thought it was funny. Then they met up in an abandoned town, which looked straight out of, I can't believe, Hell or High Water, that I was like, I expect to see Chris Pine and Ben Foster around the corner any second after robbing a bank. But anyway, I loved Mark Wahlberg, as I said in my non-spoiler review, riding the drones. It was totally digital Mark Wahlberg, but that whole action sequence from when he accidentally goes out the elevator, the glass elevator, to falling down, to riding the drones, to sliding around. It was really believable for a live action sequence that should have been impossible to do as live action, but they did it. So another step forward for the visual effects industry. And then Cogman showed up. My favorite guy. I love Cogman so much. He's fabulous. But then the movie switched gears when Cogman was like, you should leave these other secondary characters behind because I have a new batch waiting for you in England. And Mark Wahlberg's like, okay. So I thought that was funny. I was like, wow, you're really just going to totally leave those characters? And they're like, we are. And I was like, I don't love them that much. So they've served their time. And so then we went to England, and I thought not only were the cars in England gorgeous, there's that one car that when Cogman and Anthony Hopkins are racing through the streets of London, and it was like white and black. I'm sure you saw it. It almost looked like they entered a room in the back seat instead of a car. That car was amazing. I loved it. I was like, I wish they hadn't switched out of that car. I loved it so much. But occasionally, they were shooting in the exact same location as the night scenes in The Mummy. So that was a little distracting. I was like, wow, that cemetery is really popular for location scouts. Like, they should be like, we just literally had another film shoot here. You should go find another place to film. And Transformers was like, we can take The Mummy. And it looks like they will. But then they had the secret history of the Transformers, which they outlined, which was tough to get behind. Like, when they were like, Bumblebee fought the Nazis. I was like, I don't know if I can continue on this journey with you guys. It's getting too ridiculous. But then Cogman brought it back whenever he was trying to make the story more dramatic with either the organ or his singing. I was like, you're hilarious, Cogman. And then Cogman was just so well realized, from Jim Carter's voice acting to the animation team. It was just fabulous. Although I have to say, they established that Laura Haddock's character was a descendant of Merlin, and then she's obviously going up against Quintessa, and this was very old school, where the women in the story are the sorceresses because they don't have the muscle to be the fighters. And I was like, especially after just seeing Wonder Woman, you were like, guys, it's 2017. I'm sorry you didn't know this when you made this movie, so I'll give you a pass, but I don't know if this can continue this way. Then next they went to a submarine where they could get to the staff. Somehow Laura Haddock's character could I don't know how she even figured out it was the submarine, by the way. I guess that was what the museum was. But and I liked when Anthony Hopkins was like, this museum's closed forever. I was like, oh, hilarious. But I mean, none of it was made. It started to fly off the rails here. I was like, I don't know what's happening. But I was still kind of into it because Cogman, again, I loved that Cogman was such a big part here. I love when Mark Wahlberg was like, did that crazy sociopath robot just shoot himself out one of the torpedo tubes? And it was like, he did. It was fabulous. I loved Cogman's can-do attitude. And he got stuff done. And then I liked the flirting between Mark Wahlberg and Laura Haddock here. I thought it was nice. I enjoyed that romantic aspect of the movie, as brief as it was. They got me. And then the movie then they lost me when they had all this stuff with Stonehenge, and I was just like, it's just so crazy. It was a bunch of science garbledygook. And they were like, oh, Pangea, when it's all together, Stonehenge is in the middle, and that's a secret transformer base. And I was like, I don't understand anything here. It's all a mess. Also, when Cybertron showed up and started like scraping the Earth and like broke the moon, I was like, how are we going to continue this film franchise? I don't think you can come back from this kind of damage. I mean, unless everybody was lying, if they said something happened to the moon, it would hurt like the gravitational pull and the way the ocean went. I was like, was that all a lie? I don't know. And then they were like, and then I like that they were like scraping cities, and they were like and they were like going to take out this huge metropolis. But then you cut to the European Space Agency, and they're all like, "What can we do to fix this?" And you're like, "Why aren't you more panicked? A city full of people literally just scraped off the face of the earth." So I don't know. I think it's weird sometimes when they raise the stakes so high and then they don't acknowledge it. It just becomes like a VFX demo reel to some degree. So I didn't like that either. And then if you're into Nemesis Prime, as I said in my non-spoiler review, well then don't blink, because this is literally how long it's going to take me to explain what happens is literally how much screen time the story gets. Okay? So Optimus Prime is floating in space. He floats into Cybertron. Ah, score! What good aim. Then Quintessa's there, waiting for him, and she's like, you are going to do my bidding. And bam, he like almost instantly, she slaps him across the face, putting like a red mark of shame, and then his eyes go purple almost immediately. And he's like, whatever you say, Quintessa. And I was like, that was the shortest courtship I've ever seen. And then he shows up in the last reel, tries to kill Bumblebee, just as he does in the trailers. There's not much more of that. Mark Wahlberg jumps in and says, no, not Bumblebee, whips his hair back and forth a couple of times, all, with all slicked with water. And I was like, your haircut's awesome, Mark Wahlberg. It really did work for him. And then Bumblebee spoke. That was like the whole point of, I think, Nemesis Prime. The Bumblebee, I don't know how, I can't explain to you still how he spoke, by the way. But Bumblebee spoke. He used his real voice, and he said, I would die for you, Optimus Prime. And that's how it snapped him out of Quintessa's spell. And you know what? It was supposed to be a really big moment, and no one in my theater reacted. Nobody cared. I think because the voice, I don't know, I was like, I waited a long time to hear that. And even the fans, like these press screenings for these kind of movies, they're like, maybe critics will be wet blankets. So let's stuff a bunch of fans in the front of the theater in the back so their responses will maybe bring up the energy and maybe make critics think twice before trashing something that's clearly beloved by a number of people. But no one cared. No one. I mean, if you're a Transformers fan, was that Bumblebee's voice like from the series and stuff? I prefer his clever audio clips, quite frankly. Like, oh, that was a good choice. I was trying to actually think of that while I was watching the movie. I was like, how do you cross-reference these, Bumblebee? How do you pull them up so quickly? Do you have how do you categorize them? I thought it was pretty interesting. I was like, I'd like to know your system. It's working very well for you. And I enjoyed the guessing game of where did that audio clip come from. Then there is a brief end scene before the credits. They didn't make you wait and the credits went by really quickly too. I don't know how that happened so fast. I was like, we're gonna be here for a while, and then they were like, no, you're not. And I was like, wow. But there was no end credit sequence. So at the very end, they're like, Quintessa is disguised as a human, and she's up to more shenanigans, and she's like telling some dude in the sand, also kind of like the Mummy, being like, I want to help you defeat something deep in the earth. Unicron. And they first said that was a name of the planet, that Earth was called Unicron. But it turns out, I looked it up, and Unicron is like this major character in Transformers lore from the very first Transformers movie. So I'm sure some hardcore Transformers fans are like, oh yeah, unicorn. But they didn't really do a good job selling it, I think, in the movie. I'm going to look into it more, but I was not totally impressed. Then as for my favorite characters in the movie, Cogman, #1. Jim Carter, Mr. Carson from Downton Abbey, did a fabulous job voicing the character. And he was, so, again, so well animated. I loved his design. He just was an enchanting mechanical figure. Then, second place, Mark Wahlberg. I gotta say, Mark Wahlberg delivers something very specific, but just like Dwayne Johnson, when he's good, he's good. I think they're both in danger of being overexposed. But here, I just thought it was really good use of Mark Wahlberg. I thought he was very funny. I thought he was really, his heart was in it. I thought he did a great job with all the VFX, interacting with things that weren't there. I was really impressed. Then I have to give Laura Haddock a third place because she was really a duo with Mark Wahlberg. And it was interesting because she had that Victoria's Secret model look that Michael Bay always goes for, but she could act and was likable. So everybody wins. So I liked her quite a bit. And then Stanley Tucci as Merlin. He's got to go next. I thought he was hilarious. Then Anthony Hopkins. I liked him. I thought he did a good job. I thought he was entertaining. You know, he did what he came to do. Then I had to go with Hot Rod. Omar Sy is actually voicing Hot Rod. He did a good job. But my favorite thing about Hot Rod was his time bubbles. I thought those were a lot of fun, and they used them well within the context of the story. So I was like, that's a cool weapon you got there, Hot Rod. I like you. And then I have to also put Quintessa on my list because she was just so old school Saturday morning cartoon, like Enchantress. It was crazy. And she was very much also like the Enchantress in Suicide Squad. It was funny that they actually designed a character that was so unapologetically old school. And so I kind of thought that was interesting. The other Transformers were all fine, but again, they were really secondary characters in the movie. They focused more on the humans here, which I appreciated, but I can imagine some of you being disappointed. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. As for the script, again, it's a bit of a mess, but there are some such clever moments here and there that I feel that at the end of the day, the movie is willed to life by great acting. In a Transformers movie, I'm serious, like everybody was just so into it, and I appreciated that. And it made me into it. Then, behind the camera, great directing by Michael Bay, and great cinematography, which of course always is a Michael Bay trademark, but you gotta shout it out. And then great visual effects. It was just such a beautiful, clear picture. It was like screensaver the movie, but screensavers can be enchanting, and this was in that way. And I have to say, it reminded me that Michael Bay movies once were good. The people once really liked Michael Bay movies, like, for instance, The Rock or The Island. And if you like The Rock or you like The Island, I think you'll enjoy this Transformers movie. And if you've liked Transformers movies, I think you'll be really happy with this. And even if you're on the edge, I think you'll like this. But if you've always been, like, hating on Transformers movies, then you shall continue to hate. But that's my spoiler review of Transformers The Last Knight. Who was the last knight? It was Mark Wahlberg. Oh, yeah! I liked that moment when he had kind of his own Excalibur sword, you know, and he was able to stop one of the knights from hurting Optimus Prime. I was like, how did you get such amazing arm strength? I don't know how that worked. It doesn't make any sense, but I'll go with it. But then he never used the sword again. Like, he was the last knight, but they really didn't do... I thought that they didn't really deliver on the promises of what Mark Wahlberg and Laura Haddock were supposed to do as a duo, as the last knight, although I thought it was funny about his why he was picked to be at the knight, and the whole chase bit. I thought, you know, it could have come across as corny, but it worked. But then also Laura Haddock as being the descendant of Merlin, they didn't really do anything with that either, which was unfortunate. But anyway, fun time. I liked it. I think it's a good summer popcorn movie, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about it down below. Transformer and non-Transformer fan and casual Transformer fan alike. All right, thanks for watching, and you can check out some more videos right now.